Thank you for being
Absolutely.
here.
I was going to comment. I mean, I know you are part of the Rebel Legion, which is super cool. And
Yes.
I have to ask,
Yeah.
is that that looks like either a bounding Rebel Legion kind of thing, or what do you got going on there with
This
that?
is my
Cool.
Callus jacket. It is
Okay.
not Rebel Legion approved yet. I have not submitted it, but I did a Callus cosplay, gosh, maybe 5 years ago now. And I busted out, when I want to look spiffy.
Well,
you do.
we know these things because we know you. We follow you. We're friends with you on social media. For anybody that's watching, for anybody that's listening to us on the replay, give us a little quick intro to who Andy is. I know you're a cosplayer, you're a voice actor, you're a podcaster, you do a bunch of different stuff, but give us kind of the quick rundown of who Andy is.
Sure. The quick rundown is fell in love with Star Wars at 5 years old. Born in 91, so I grew up with the prequels. Saw the special editions in theater, stuff like that. Third generation pastor, went to Liberty University, went to seminary. Met my boyfriend in 2015, dated for secret for a year, came out of the closet 2016 with a semester left in my master's degree, which I did not finish because of that. Had some drama with the family. Things didn't go great.
Sure.
But still a Star Wars fan. Star Wars, finding the community of Star Wars at Celebration 2019, where like I'd always been a fan. I was a member of the 501st and the Rebel Legion by that point, but like meeting tons of friends at Celebration was really a huge bright part in my fandom. I love doing cosplay. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at a one hat town. There's tons of Star Wars cosplay and stuff there. So if you're into costuming, that sort of thing. I'm one of the gays with pronouns, as you can see. So I go by they, them. I'm not going to beat anyone up about, slipping up here or there, but it's the sort of thing that, it's how I like to be referred to. So I consider it respectful.
Yeah, for sure. And you referenced Star Wars Celebration, and you referenced the community, and while we have you tonight, I want to talk a little bit about fandom, which in a way sometimes kind of feels like has some negative connotation of late, which is kind of weird, and it shouldn't. But talk to me about what the fandom means to you personally, right? Because as you said, you went through a lot, your entire coming out process. You wear it with pride, as you absolutely should. But what does the Star Wars community mean to you?
Star Wars has been like sort of a mixed bag. Like when I knew I was going to come out, like I planned it out. I planned it out like a murder, which like I had slowly been moving like personal belongings I cared about to like my car or like a friend's house. And I started going through like my social media and being like, I know that like I'm coming out. This is going to like blow up everywhere. Like, who do I start unfriending now? And one of the things I did was I sold my 501st armor. I sold my Stormtrooper armor because I knew my garrison was really homophobic.
Wow.
And I was like, they're not going to be cool with this. And I know I'm going to be getting it from like my church. I know I'm going to be getting it from my family. I know I'm going to be getting it from my college friends. Like I don't want to get it from like Star Wars also.
Right.
So I left the Legion at that point. I like reinvested that money in a Rebel Legion costume and like started working on the approval process there because I had heard that like the local group was a little more chill about that sort of thing. But like Star Wars doesn't have the best track record with inclusion, and that's a real shame. I think they've started trying to be better. Like I remember when Wikipedia was super homophobic, and thank goodness it's not now. And the new crew over there is incredible, and that's so comforting to see that change. Thanks Wikipedia, I love you guys. But like I remember when the only trans character was from the really transphobic Aura Singh comic from 2002. It's horribly offensive, and like that's still kind of the case. I think she's still the only trans character. So like that's we have sister now. So like that's still not great though. That it's like okay, I can think of two or three trans characters in the current canon, and like versus the one really horrible one from Legends. It's like, that's still not a great track record. So it's something that Star Wars is trying to be better at, which is great. But the fandom itself is still kind of a mixed bag at times.
You muted, Nick.
I knew that was going to happen. At least once a show, that's going to happen. What I was starting to say before I muted myself and, interrupted myself. As Star Wars fans, certainly as those of us who are involved in social media, very active, we spend probably way more time than any of us want to admit or should in general on the negative stuff. We shouldn't spend all this time wallowing in the mud. As we say, if you wrestle with a pug, you wrestle with a pig, everybody gets dirty. I'm from the South. Those are the kind of things we do. So my question for you, Andy, is certainly as a queer Star Wars fan, as a queer content creator, what have been the highlights? What have been the things that you talked about celebration? You talked about having these moments. What are the things that have uplifted you as a Star Wars fan? What are the things that give you hope? Because if nothing else, Star Wars is about hope. What are the things that in the midst of the nonsense that we see, the things that, tend to dominate social media and these spaces we are in, what are the things that lift you up and keep you going as a Star Wars fan?
You guys were talking about Andor quite a bit at the opening, and I think back to an interview I saw with Diego Luna when Rogue One was coming out. Mm-hmm. And he was really emotional, and he talked about how they let him keep his accent.
Yeah.
And that he had never seen a sci-fi movie where someone spoke like him. And the fact that he was allowed to talk like himself in Star Wars was so important to him. And then I think back to, I have so many friends who are Hispanic and Latino, and they love Andor. And Andor is a show about space Mexicans. Like that is what that show is about. That show is the Mexican American experience in space. And hearing them talk about like how much that has meant to them and how much they've connected with that story, and they can show it to friends and family members who aren't Star Wars fans and say like, no, this is for us. And it's like, how could anyone be against that? Like, how could anyone hear the actor talk about that, see the fan reaction, and then go, ooh, actually, we don't like woke Star Wars? It's like, what is wrong with you? Right. So like when I see how much inclusion affects people, when I read Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older and I met Taka, I pulled over my car because I was crying. Like that meant so much to me to see they, them pronouns in Star Wars. I've been a fan since 1996. Like reading the Aftermath trilogy and Sinjir. Like, yeah, there's a gay man in Star Wars and he's not a joke and he's not a homophobic Hutt. Like it's right. It's good representation. Like that meant so much to me. So like those moments are really cool. I'm blanking on the character's name, but there's a non-binary handmaiden in the Padme trilogy. That's a really cool character. So like seeing Star Wars take those steps, I'd love to see more on screen representation. Yep. But then like also just meeting fans who are chill and they just want to talk about Star Wars with me. Right. Like that's the best.
So I want to get into that a little bit because this is the thing that drives me the most crazy. And to hear you say this, it makes sense to me because I feel like I'm fairly reasonable as a human being.
I consider you very reasonable. like even when we've disagreed, I've been like,
right, we've disagreed reasonably. Yeah. But I think I like this. How do you respond to, because when I see people like, I just literally don't understand why somebody would have an adverse reaction to seeing a queer character in Star Wars or anything for that matter. Or as we've seen just recently, you got people, I won't say that he who should not be named has been saying that women are not even Star Wars fans, right? How do you respond is obviously not a great question because we all get pissed off, but how do we work through that? Because that needs to change. Again, honestly, look, I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to that. I'm not a part of the queer community, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to as the straight, boring, cis white male, I don't give a shit. I'm glad that everybody can play in the sandbox with me. So why is that so hard for people? And how do you, what might you say about something along those lines?
So I think when it comes to specifically like sexism and queer phobia in fandom, I think they're both rooted back to patriarchy. I think there's some, like, speaking specifically about the one name that we're all thinking about, I think he is a child, and
Right.
I think he thinks girls are icky, and because he has, like this deep-rooted sexism, gay people make him uncomfortable because he feels that gay people see him the way he sees women,
Right.
which is as an object. And then that all gets warped into this idea of, well, Star Wars is this exclusive club, whereas, like, if you love Star Wars, you should want people who are different than you to also love Star Wars, because that makes Star Wars more interesting. You should want people who have different experiences than you making Star Wars, because they're going to make a Star Wars you would never think of,
Right,
never see, and that should be exciting to you. Like, I love that we're finally getting Star Wars made by some women, because we've never seen a Star Wars made by a woman on the big screen before. And she's going to do something that Rian Johnson or George Lucas or J.J. Abrams or Eisner haven't done before. Like it's exciting. So like I think it's it's weird. Like, my husband likes Star Wars. My husband doesn't love Star Wars, but he enjoys it. He made the Callus jacket for me when we went to Celebration together. I would say he loves Rogue One and Andor, but the rest of it, he's like, oh, it's fine. I like it. But I like that he shares it with me. And the idea that if you're a straight guy, that you're like, ew, I don't want women to like Star Wars. I'm like, but don't you have a girlfriend or a wife or something? Like, wouldn't you want to enjoy it with her?
Listen, I am begging my wife to watch and like Star Wars with me, and she won't.
You have daughters, wouldn't you want them to be interested in the things like that you love? Like, wouldn't you want to enjoy it with them? Why do you not want women to like Star Wars with? Like, that's like even just from a selfish reason, wouldn't you want to enjoy the thing you love with the people you love?
But let me ask you, like, is it? And this is where I get kind of confused, flustered, unsure. I don't know what the right word is, but when you think about it, like, it shouldn't like, Star Wars is Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
The story is the story. It comes from this great place, a galaxy far, far away. Now 2 galaxies far, far away. Like, is it what is the voice of a woman going to do that will change the Star Wars that somebody who loved prequels and original trilogy and thinks that the Disney era sucks? Like, what is, I don't like, what's the fear there? Are they afraid of a bad story? And if that's the case, then it's just pure misogyny, right? It's pure sexism.
Was rewriting behind George the whole time with the original trilogy too. So like, her fingerprints are all over it. Same with Marsha Lucas. So like, if they're like, oh, well, like, Star Wars is a man's story, it's like, no, women have been like steering it the whole time already anyway.
Yep.
As for queer stuff too, like, I know that they get really upset when a queer person is like, I relate to Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And it's like, why do you care if a gay kid watches Star Wars and feels seen by Luke Skywalker? Like, didn't you watch Star Wars and feel seen by Luke Skywalker? Like, don't you love him so much you like fake cried on camera for him? Like why should you care if like a 14-year-old gay kid in like South Dakota feels seen by George or feels seen by Luke, and it makes him going to school a little bit easier?
Right.
Because he feels seen by his hero. Like what's wrong with you? Like
well, and the funny thing is, not the funny thing, but the ironic thing is, most people who are so set against the Disney era, actually most Star Wars fans, period, let me put it that way, all Star Wars fans, Empire Strikes Back comes up in the top 1 or 2 of almost every single fan. And I know that's super generic to say, stereotypical, but it's true. I've done 195 episodes of Around the Galaxy. We know Empire Strikes Back comes at the top. Lee Brackett is the driving force behind the best Star Wars story outside of possibly Last Jedi, but that's another conversation. This woman helped George create the best Star Wars he could. And so, like, it's what it becomes is it's just how much of it do you think, and I'm afraid to tread here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much of it do you think has to do with the current environment that we live in versus the Star Wars fictional world that we want to be in?
Well, I think once you reach a certain point of success on YouTube, you have to feed the algorithm.
Right. Yep.
And so I do think a lot of it is the same thing going on with conservative media, podcasts, talk shows, that we have to keep the hate going and we have to keep putting out new stories. So we're going to be really mad about like 2 kids in Oklahoma who are trans and swim. Like we're gonna spend a week on that. We're gonna pump the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light thing for months and months and months. They just have to grab a thing and keep the outrage there, so that way they keep the clicks and the views going. So I think a lot of it with the negativity in fandom from like big names is purely algorithm driven. I don't think the people saying the nonsense actually really believe it.
Right.
I would be shocked if they do. I would be shocked if they actually care. They're just trying to keep the jackals pissed off and throwing a new piece of meat to them. Which like is almost worse. It's almost worse if they don't actually.
I was going to say, I mean, how does that make you feel? Because now they're using you and they're using women. They're using any
people of color.
As bait. Because honestly, I did the
Reva,
research.
Like
this guy that we're talking about, his followership has dipped over the last year and a half. And how long has he been going full in? He's in full desperation mode. Right.
He's in panic mode.
Something that like I think pisses me off more is the idea that he specifically pushes a lot that we're new fans, that we show up the Disney era, and like that's just not true. Like women have been fans of Star Wars since A New Hope came out. Gay people have been fans of Star Wars since A New Hope came out. Every gay person in the 70s and a bunch of straight people in the 70s saw A New Hope and went, those 2 robots are gay husbands. C-3PO and R2-D2 were gay icons the moment they appeared on screen. I was a Star Wars fan the moment I saw it at 5 years old in 1996. I thought Shadows of the Empire was high art. I thought it was Shakespeare. I thought it was so cool that there was a video game, a soundtrack, a comic, a novel, and they were all connected. I went to Revenge of the Sith in my bathrobe with a plastic lightsaber. Like I've been a fan for 27 years. And the idea that because I'm gay, I'm a new fan who just got here. Like, no.
You're an opportunist 27 years ago.
Shut up. Like I was a Star Wars fan before I knew I was gay. Like I've been here the whole time. Queer fans have been here the whole time. Women fans have been here the whole time. And this idea that like, oh, well, we're just showing up in the Disney era and we're new fans invading your space. And it's like, no, bro, you didn't know we were here because we didn't feel safe around you.
Well, that's exactly it, right?
If you're a straight white dude who you're like, I've never met a queer Star Wars fan. You have. They just didn't come out to you because they thought you were a creep. Right. If you're a straight white dude and you're like, I've never talked to a woman Star Wars fan before, like they saw you and like they saw how you post and they were uncomfortable around you, so they blocked your ass. Like that's why. Like we've been here the whole time. We just haven't been talking to you because you're a weirdo.
Yep.
Well, so we could go on for this for hours, Andy, and we're going to do a podcast of the Wills very soon where we dig into more of the Star Wars and religion thing because you and I have that shared background of time.
I would love that.
You know, the church that's on the horizon. That's actually the first one. As Pete and I have regrouped and talked about the different things we're doing in the network, that's actually number 1 on my list is to have that conversation. You're at the top of it. So we're going to get to that. But before we get out of here tonight, this is my question to you. I said earlier, you know, we tend to spend a lot of time, you know, when we get bogged down in social media, dragged down by the dark, looking for the light. So the kind of wrap up question I want to throw it to you is, what are the best ways for us to combat this? Whether we are basic, boring, white, cis males, whether we're a part of the queer community, whether we're African American, Hispanic, whoever we are, we all love Star Wars. What is the best way for us to combat this toxicity without also giving it, more oxygen, more life, more breath?
Something I love to do is I'm huge into like tabletop gaming and RPGs and stuff. So I'll take my X-Wing or my Legion stuff. I'll go to the local game store. I'll get some games in, and I'll talk to Star Wars fans who aren't online, which is incredible because there are tons of Star Wars fans who just aren't online, and they have no idea who these like jackasses are. They have no idea what the new drama is, and they just want to talk about Star Wars. So it's like, oh, you haven't seen the Twitter drama? Like, you haven't seen the thing on the YouTube? Like, yeah, man, let's just talk about spaceships. So like, I love doing that. And then just like connecting with my friends who are fans and who are like positive people, like Bombadcast or Star Wars Explained, That Gay Jedi, you guys, like, man, what are they talking about right now? Like, right. Let me text Alden, like, what's Alden doing? And just like connect with fans who aren't like negative black holes who are just like so pissed off. And that's really refreshing. And then the last thing is just like, I try and find a blog post from someone who like has a different perspective than me, whether it's a black fan, whether it's a cis woman fan, like someone else out there who has a different lived experience than me. Let me read what their thoughts are, like what they're talking about, and like get inspired, because hearing from fans who are different than me is, I think, really freaking cool. So I love reading stuff like that, or watching a video essay and just like vibing with it and being like, oh, I didn't think of the Force that way, or I didn't think of the Rebellion that way, or I didn't think of Vader that way. Like, read what a trans woman says about Darth Vader. Like, that stuff is wild. Like talk about like cool perspectives. They're out there, and like, you just got to find them and like be inspired and think about Star Wars differently. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, it's a perfect answer.
But
I'll tell you what I took from it is something that I often forget, and it's something that I will keep top of mind, is talk to people who aren't online, because then you remember what not real Star Wars fans. Geez, I just used the phrase that I hate, but then you remember what the average, the people who aren't so
wrapped up in it like we are.
Listen to that. So Andy,
and you and I, we talk about our dads all the time. Like, those are the people that don't know any of this nonsense. They're 70 years old and they're like, oh yeah, Star Wars, cool. What are we talking about? Star Wars
is cool. Where's the Baby Yoda? Let's see the Baby Yoda. Andy, where can people find you online so they can follow your rational, reasonable mindset about this crazy world that we live in?
I try and be chill. I try and be reasonable when I get mad. I try and be reasonable when I get upset, and it helps. You take a deep breath and you remember none of this matters, and that helps. But I'm Adam One Hat Town everywhere. I'm on Tumblr with that. I'm on Instagram with that. I'm on Twitter with that. It's a reference to my favorite movie, Brothers Bloom by Rian Johnson. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. But Adam One Hat Town, you'll see my Star Wars cosplays. You'll hear me occasionally ranting about Space Wars and stuff. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Guys, thank you so much for having me. Shout out to Corey, Ryan Forrester, the Buttercream Dream. I love that guy. And the fact that I was on the podcast that he was on is pretty damn cool. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Corey's the best.
Corey is the man. So thank you so much, Andy.
Thank you so much for being here.
We will talk to you again.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. And we'll be back in just a minute with more ATG Live.